What's up everyone, it's Kellen. Now, for most competitive battlers, the release of the most recent Pokemon games, Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, was but a blip on the radar. You probably played it, reveled in the Kanto nostalgia for the millionth time, chained a few hundred chances, and then went back to the Gen 8 waiting room that is Ultra Sun and Moon competitive. But hold on just a second, perhaps we shouldn't have been so quick to move past these games. So here's the thing, Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee actually have their own weird lovable metagame that's a really strange hybrid of Gen 7's modern mechanics, Gen 1's limited roster of Pokemon, and some additional quirks all on its own. But since, admittingly, I am one of those people who just played it and kind of put it down because I'm waiting for Pokemon Sword and Shield, this is a topic I'm gonna need help with, so I called in reinforcements.
Yo, what's up guys? Yeah, PokeaimMD here, and I am a competitive Pokemon YouTuber. I focus mainly on singles, and thank you so much, bro, for having me on this video.
Hey, what's up? I'm Nick from the YouTube channel Trainer Tips, and I play Pokemon Go every day.
So at first glance, you see Let's Go and you think, oh, Gen 1 battling, right? Well, not quite. If you don't already know, Gen 1 was a hodgepodge of disgustingly overpowered psychic types, weird mechanics, and status flying everywhere that makes for an entirely unique metagame. But here's the thing, despite being set in Kanto, Let's Go is a modern game, which means there's a physical special split, well, just the special split in general actually, the crit mechanics we're used to today, fairy and steel types, and everything else from Gen 7, including Mega Evolutions, but not Z moves. It also means you don't have the weird little idiosyncrasies of Gen 1 like Hyper Beam not needing a turn to recharge if you get a kill, or the 1% miss chance. However, it's not like Let's Go is just a Gen 7 Kanto remake. There are different mechanics, or in some cases, just a loss of mechanics. Let's Go is notable for not having items or abilities, which is super weird to me, but whatever. Meaning there's no Levitate, no Choice Scarf, no leftovers, you get the picture. We'll get into the specifics later. The key now is, well, the key items. Mega Stones still exist, you just don't need to be holding them to Mega Evolve, as they live in the key items pocket. Keep that in mind, because it's going to be very important later on.
Let's Go's move pool is also a unique detail that sets it apart. Most moves work exactly the same as in Gen 7. The exceptions are Mega Drain and Absorb, which are buffed to compensate for the removal of Giga Drain, Teleport, which is a negative priority U-turn, and the 2-turn attacks of Solar Beam and Sky Attack, which are now destructive 200 base power. However, Let's Go is also missing nearly 500 existing moves. Gone are weather moves, Pursuit, Wish, Baton Pass, Bullet Punch. Even my boy False Swipe is gone. The only new moves are Melmetal's signature move, Double Iron Bash, and the moves that buff up the starter Eevee and Pikachu's move pools. Now, they had to make these Pokemon good, so it makes sense. Most of the moves are actually pretty relevant, especially when you consider the drastically lowered move pool, and they shape the metagame. For one thing, Eevee's special fairy type move called Sparkly Swirl is the only cleric move in the game. This means a few things. One, status moves are very popular, and it's very hard to get rid of them. There's a taste of Gen 1 for you. Two, pretty much every normal type runs Facade, and you can guess why. There are a few other really specific parts of Let's Go's move pool that drastically change the game. For one, Stealth Rock are the only hazard in the game, but Rapid Spin, Defog, Magic Bounce, basically every form of hazard control, it doesn't exist. It's not in Pokemon Let's Go, and this has a huge impact because this means that when you get up Stealth Rock, they are here to stay. Among all the moves they removed, U-turn wasn't one of them, meaning it's a really powerful way to build momentum, though thankfully there was no Volt Switch in the game, so it doesn't push it over the edge. Recovery is also really hard to come by, Wish doesn't exist, and there are no leftovers. And finally, there's virtually no speed control, no Sticky Web, no Tailwind, no Trick Room, and no Choice Scarf. Unless you're paralyzed, you're moving first, and more importantly, even if you are, you always know the order of turns.
The reason for that is the fact that EVs don't exist in Let's Go. IVs and Natures are still around, but with IVs usually being straight min or maxed, the point is that the stat spreads for different Pokemon are much less varied than in regular competitive Pokemon. So like we were saying, the Pokemon with the higher base speed stat almost always goes first. But wait, you say, what about Candy? Candy, if you didn't know, are the sweet placeholders for EVs that exist in Let's Go. There's a whole system to Candy that involves different sizes of treats, species-specific goodies, and something called awakening values. But what you really need to know is that they give boosts to your stats up to 200 in each stat, and there's no overall cap for each of them like with EVs, meaning a maxed out Pokemon in Let's Go has plus 200 in every stat as well. One other wrinkle is that a Pokemon's happiness actually impacts their stats, with maxed happiness Pokemon receiving a full 10% boost. However, Let's Go Online decides that we can't live in such a utopian society, setting everyone to 70 happiness, which is about a 3% boost. There are two options when you play online, with awakening values, aka stat boosts, or without. Let's cover the meta with AVs first. So Candy gives a flat boost of 200, with this number being being so big, base stats matter far less in a candy meta, except for speed, since base speed pretty much determines everything in terms of turn order. Since candy gives a flat boost of 200 to every stat, you overall end up with a much bulkier metagame. Think about it, you're getting 200 to your attacking stats, but you're also getting 200 to defense and HP. You may think that this would lead to a stall-based meta, but in fact it actually does just the opposite. Since everything is bulky, you can throw out Taunt pretty willy-nilly and guarantee it'll be a safe-ish move, since nothing dies in one hit. On the other hand, setup mons have plenty of time to get their moves off, since they also usually survive. As such, the dominant meta in Candied Let's Go involves Pokemon with amazing move pools and typings, as opposed to good base stats. That 200 boost really normalizes things. Stall is in fact nearly impossible to pull off in Candied, because the opponent will inevitably be able to switch in a Taunter or set up a mon that's actually bulky enough to do its thing and punch through. The two absolutely dominant Pokemon are Mew and Starter Eevee, who gets way better moves than Starter Pikachu. In addition to Sparkly Swirl, Sizzly Slide is a guaranteed burn that also does damage. That's nuts. And if that wasn't enough, Sappy Seed does the same with Leech Seed, and Eevee also has moves that do damage and put up screens at the same time. The thing is, since all of Eevee's moves are actually attacks, it's also Taunt immune. Meanwhile, Mew packs Taunt and Dragon Tail, meaning everything's gonna get a meal full of rocks. However, by far the most popular meta for Let's Go is Candyless. So with all that said, let's go into the metagame of Let's Go OU. You eat less candy, you don't end up as bulky. Makes sense to me. Candyless gets rid of the extra bulk, leaving you with a metagame that's pared down. The only stat differences you're ever really gonna get come from natures. While we've stressed that Let's Go is different than Gen 1, this is where it's similar, in the linear stat builds. Just like in Gen 1, you'll see a good amount of mixed sets, if the stats allow, simply because you're not over-invested in any one defensive or offensive stat. As opposed to Candyless, base stats are absolutely the central determining factor for a huge portion of the metagame, and Pokemon with great base stats are almost invariably the top threats. We can see an example of that with Starter Eevee, and since its name has starter in it, let's start there. While Starter Eevee is a beast in Candied, its lackluster base stats let it down in Candyless. Don't get me wrong, this thing still packs a metric ton of utility in between guaranteed burns, an attacking Leech Seed move that can kill Rhydon, and of course, Sparkly Swirl. Not only is Sparkly Swirl the only cleric move, it also means that rest becomes an incredible form of recovery, as you can rest with them on and then immediately clear its status with Sparkly Swirl after it's topped off. However, this is Eevee's main niche, and one that it serves well. It doesn't dominate the game like in Candied, but it's certainly an extremely useful Pokemon, and a good case study in how the Candyless meta is different. Eevee is one example of a Pokemon that exploits Let's Go's unique environment for success, but there are a few others. Alolan Dugtrio's access to Stealth Rocks and its status as one of the few Steel types let it play an important role with its high speed. Regular Dugtrio is near useless without Arena Trap. Poliwrath has its own niche as a viable Scald user, which is critical in a metagame of huge offensive threats. These Pokemon are frequent enough that being able to beat them is pretty important. While these Pokemon are the premiers at their job, you see other Pokemon attempting to fill the same niche as well, such as Nidoking and Nidoqueen for Stealth Rocks and Slowbro for Scald. Any Pokemon with reliable recovery is also in a great spot due to the rarity of healing moves.
Let's start with offensive threats first, and then we'll be able to explain why defensive checks work against them. Melmetal is an absolute unit of a Pokemon. Consider that in Pokemon Let's Go, there are only 3 other fully evolved Steel types, Alolan Sandslash, Magneton, which doesn't even have Magnet Pull, and Alolan Dugtrio. Melmetal would more than likely be a good Pokemon if it just had decent stats and, on its typing alone. But Melmetal is an absolute monster, like I said. Massive HP and physical stats, paired with a broken stab, and this means that it is a top tier threat. It also has amazing coverage moves on top of that. Physical Bolt Beam, Earthquake and Sewer Power, and its stab move. I gotta tell you guys how good this move is. Double Iron Bash is an effective base power of 120, 100% accurate, and has an effective 51% flinch chance. Luckily, Melmetal has a base 34 speed, really slow, and there's no Trick Room in the game. That low speed is one of Melmetal's few but notable weaknesses, on top of having a low special defense stat and no reliable recovery. But there is another Pokemon I want to talk about, Zapdos. Without Zapdos, Melmetal might run wild, but the fact that it resists Double Iron Bash and Sewer Power and floats over Earthquake completely makes Zapdos a great answer to Melmetal, even if it could get Ice Punched. Zapdos is one of those mixed Pokemon we talked about earlier. It holds onto its great attacking combo of Drill Peck and Thunderbolt from Gen 1, and Roost and U-Turn provided recovery in a wishless metagame and an easy way to build momentum. Let's not forget how scary this thing was in Gen 1. It may not have a flat 125 special anymore, but having the only in special attack certainly isn't too shabby, especially with base 100 speed. Now Zapdos and Melmetal may be some of the most used attackers, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're the most dangerous. No, this is where one of Let's Go's quirks enters into the picture, how it handles Mega Evolution. As we mentioned earlier, Mega Stones are now key items, which has one staggering implication. You can bring as many Megas as you want and evolve them on the fly without sacrificing what would have been an otherwise useful item slot. Of course, you can still only Mega Evolve one Mega per battle, meaning that the other non-Mega Pokemon better be useful. In general, players still only bring one Mega, which is why these super destructive Pokemon are still lower in usage than Zapdos and Melmetal. You gotta choose, unless you want to bring a regular old Beedrill after you've already Mega Evolved your Alakazam. So, let's get into Megas. We can pretty immediately see that some Mega Pokemon, Pidgeot, Blastoise, and Charizard Y, are exceedingly reliant on their abilities, meaning they're not too useful. Charizard Y also has to contend with unremovable Stealth Rock, which doesn't help it out that much. At least Mega Charizard X is in the in-between zone. Basically, it loses its flying type when it Megas, yeah, and it can make it slightly more reliable, especially with Roost and having good Dragon utility, but it's still not that great. Mega Slowbro may still have Scald, but it's similarly hampered by not having Regenerator in base form, and while Shout Armor isn't as game-changing ability as Drought or No Guard Hurricanes in Mega Pidgeot's case, it doesn't provide Slowbro's niche of being able to calm Mind up with no fear of being crit. Also, Hurricane isn't even in the game. That's why Mega Pidgeot kinda sucks. So now that we've gotten Megas that aren't good out of the way, let's talk about the ones that are amazing. In a metagame with no EVs, high attacking stats are incredibly valuable, so it should come as no surprise that Mega Alakazam is one of the best available Mega Pokemon in the game. This is a mon with special attack that's only beaten out by Deoxys Attack, Mega Rayquaza, Primal Kyogre, and Mega Mewtwo X in regular Gen 7 OU. 3 of those Pokemon don't exist in the metagame, and the other is banned. So Alakazam is possibly the greatest force of destruction in the game. Calm Mind plus Psychic, Dazzling Gleam, and Shadow Ball give it near perfect coverage, although the lack of Focus Blast does open up its room for being countered by Melmetal, though not especially steep price to pay when you obliterate almost everything else. What's more, it's tied for the fastest mon in the game with Electrode and our next contender. Mega Aerodactyl brings that same blistering speed paired with physical power, and wouldn't you know it, amazing coverage as well. What's more, it can beat Mega Alakazam with Crunch, and it has reliable recovery in Roost, plus Taunt to stop other setup mons. Speaking of setup, Mega Gyarados may not have its signature Dragon Dance, but it's got a terrifying combo of the highest attack in OU, substantial bulk, amazing typing, and passable utility as well. Thunder Wave and Substitute can buy turns for it to punch through teams, and Dragon Tail is an especially useful tool to pack when Stealth Rocks are so prominent. Dark Water has great coverage, and Earthquake can be used on the few Pokemon that struggle off Crunch or Waterfall, such as Poliwrath or opposing Mega Gyarados. Mega Gengar similarly brings Substitute and status, although in this case it's Will-O-Wisp, and in some rare cases even disabled. Even without Shadow Tag, this thing is a threat. It doesn't need that busted ability when it has stats nearly as good as Mega Alakazam. In fact, Mega Gengar is often even more dangerous when it gets in, due to the struggle to switch in on its explosive stab and coverage moves, which include Thunderbolt, the buff Mega Drain, and even Sucker Punch to render Mega Alakazam's extra speed useless. Speaking of Pokemon who don't need their busted abilities to be good, Mega Beedrill manages to appear as a top tier threat due to its high speed and attack. This is one of the best answers to Gengar, as it outspeeds it and can threaten with either a Jura Run or a stab boosted U-turn to gain momentum if Gengar ends up switching out. Along with Poison Jab, Beedrill can even threaten meaningful damage on Zapdos, and it's absolutely the best, fastest U-turner user in the game. Finally, Mega Venusaur bucks the trend by being a more defensively oriented Mega. Of course, its special attack is still pretty good, but where it really shines is its great defense and is one of the few Pokemon with recovery available to it. More than that, it can provide recovery to its team as the best Leech Seed Pokemon in the game, as well as a Sleep Powder user. So while that's all for Megas, it's certainly not the end of defensive Pokemon. True walls are hard to pull off in Let's Go, especially those that can offer utility, but there are a few Pokemon that can boast that claim, most notably Mew. Mew fares better than starter Eevee in the switch to Cannon list. Let's not forget it has base 100 stats all around. That plus an amazing mono psychic typing, making it a solid wall that can even handle the likes of Mega Alakazam through its incredible move pool, which includes Roost, Will-O-Wisp, Taunt, Stealth Rock, U-turn, Dragon Tail. It learns every single move. Because of that, it's actually a bit misleading to label Mew a defensive Pokemon. While that's certainly the primary role that it plays, it can also run Nasty Plot, Bulk Up, Calm Mind to function as a sweeper. In general though, Mew finds a lot of use from being a slow U-turn user because it can afford to take a hit to get something else in. We can't overstate how useful having Roost is. One of the best answers to Mew is Alolan Muck, whose sheer status as the only viable dark type outside of Mega Gyarados boosts it to the top. While it has to be afraid of Mew's Will-O-Wisp, Crunch puts a world of hurt on Mew, as well as Mega Alakazam and Gengar, which struggle to burst through Alolan Muck. In addition, it brings incredible coverage moves in the form of Fire Blast, Mega Drain, and its choice of Ice Ice Punch, Toxic, or Rest. It's also worth noting that Foul Play lets it deal with other physical threats better as well. So we've mentioned Mega Drain a lot, but attentive listeners may have noticed that the only Pokemon that have been weak to it are Poliwrath and Mega Gyarados. Enter Rhydon, a utility machine and premier physical wall. Stealth Rock plus Dragon Tail are a big selling point, but Rhydon's true use comes from a throwback to how it functioned in Gen 1 as a counter to Zapdos. Other Pokemon that see use include Starmie as a fast Scald user, Dragonite as one of the best late game sweepers in the game with Outrage and Agility, as well as Roost and Cloyster, who still manages to be an extremely threatening Shell Smash user even without access to Skill Link. Snorlax also deserves mention as the best special status soaker in the game. While Rest Talk doesn't exist, a boosted Facade coming from Snorlax still hurts, and Crunch and Earthquake still give it great coverage moves, especially against Mega Gengar.
That sums up the game's top tier threats. Just like the original Gen 1, it's a set of specific Pokemon that rule the realm. So how good was Let's Go actually? Well, the lack of items, abilities, and EVs tie the two together, and both have faced dismal reception as being too linear. But for all the notes of similarity that recall Pokemon's origins, Let's Go is absolutely its own distinct meta, and with a good amount of nuance. Let's Go is an offensive meta less based on sussing out the opponent's sets and more on accurate prediction and board positioning. With the lack of recovery and near permanent Stealth Rocks, every bit of damage and every switch matters. So if you're like me and you found your Let's Go playing too simple, that's your prerogative as well as mine. But consider hopping into a battle on Showdown. Thank you so much to our guests, PokeAim and Nick from Trainer Tips for helping me make this video and for providing me with loads of information so that we could properly explain this meta to you all.
I just want to say thank you so much for having me on the channel. If you guys are actually interested in competitive Pokemon, whether that be competitive singles or Let's Go, especially if you are interested in Let's Go, I upload Wi-Fi battles. There should be a playlist down below as well as a guide to team building. But if you're also interested in Pokemon Showdown, you guys can swing by my channel. Thank you so much for having me. I'll get out of here. Goodbye, everybody.
Stay tuned for the next episode where we talk about Pokemon Go's PvP meta. And if you want to get a head start, feel free to head on over to my channel, Trainer Tips, where you can get caught up on the latest in the world of Pokemon Go.
But don't worry, I didn't forget you original Pokemon fans, considering I am one too. Also stay tuned for Gen 2 Battling Explained, where we go over the battle mechanics of Gold, Silver, and Crystal. Thanks for watching, everyone. And as always, if you liked the video and you want to see more, be sure to subscribe to False Swipe Gaming for more weekly Pokemon content. As for the comments, I want to know, after watching this, what do you think about the Let's Go mechanics? What do you think about it compared to the other games, etc., etc.? And of course, thank you so much to our patrons for continued support of our videos, and thank you to everyone else watching as well. And follow my crew on these social media platforms. And that's all we got. See you next time, everyone.